Hey guys, so today we are answering a subscriber question, and the question in question was, Frederick, what does frameworks like Express actually do? So let's get into it. Well, Express is a web framework for Node and thereby for JavaScript developers. And the basic idea of a web framework is that it gives you already made familiar APIs that you can use in order to build a web application. Now, what does that mean? Well, a very classic example that quite a lot of people use a web framework for is routing and URL matching. You see, when you start up a web server, you may actually notice that almost every language that you have some way of creating, like basically setting up a process, which is what a program is. It's just a process that is listening on some port on your computer that allows you to actually communicate over a network in some fashion. Now, usually this is happening over TCP or HTTP when you're doing actual web work. Now, even if you can do that, like say take Node.js as an example, you can actually do this without Express. It's actually very simple. You just have to go and depend on the HTTP module that is native to Node, and in a very similar fashion to how Express actually works, to like call the function that creates your server and then listen on a port, and then you can actually take in requests, right? Now, the problem with this is that although this is very convenient and although this is very nice, there's quite a lot of, I'm not going to call it ugliness, because the use cases are slightly different between native Node HTTP and like Express. Like it's much more broad. If for Node needs to be broader, like the interfaces needs to be broader than what Express is, because Express has a very specific use case, whereas Node is a platform that needs to accommodate many more use cases than what Express actually has to do. But one of the things that is not accommodated is that URL matching, because when a request comes in, there is a path where people actually specify which URL they're trying to hit, right? And as you may have seen in Express, all you have to really do there is to do something like app.get to denote a GET request, to have a GET handler, a POST handler, a delete handler, a PUT handler, etc., etc. And then you just input the string that represents the path that somebody's going to match on. Now, that is one of the reasons why you have Express, to be able to do that without having to implement it from scratch yourself. And then you have other things where you can do variable parameters or path parameters within the string, which allows you to break that out and actually get it as a request object, or the request.param object, and get that injected. That's also something that you don't necessarily want to have to implement completely by yourself. Now, you have support for it, it's just that Express makes it a lot more convenient for you to do this. So, and this is the same for every single web framework out there. It has, regardless of which one it is, all it's designed to do is to make it a little bit easier for you to get started building a web server. Because it's one of those, like building a web server, guys, it's in many fashions the same sort of thing as building a car. So when you build a car these days, you don't design like the wheel from absolute scratch every time, or the body from absolute scratch every time. There are certain aspects to it that needs to be custom to make it attractive to people who wants to buy it. But some stuff you don't have to reinvent the wheel just because you're going to build a car. The same thing goes here. The web server is almost always going to work the exact same way. So having a framework that gets you to just kind of kickstart off all of the things that you would have to write yourself from scratch and just gives you that for free is a very beneficial thing. And that is exactly what Express is there to do. So what I want you to take away from this is that Express and other web frameworks, all they do is that they give you a few tools that is pretty much included in every single web server that you will ever build, so that you have these things prepared, and then you can build the thing that you're actually supposed to be building without having to write all this boilerplate yourself. It's just a time saver, but if you really wanted to, you could actually just reach into the native APIs of, for example, Node, and build it from scratch yourself. Although I think that there's not much value in it for a common use case, but it is still possible. Have a great day.